Welcome to the iLL podcast. When I was 15 years old, I went climbing for the very first time. It was a terrible experience. The rock was dirty, there was broken glass and graffiti everywhere, but it still changed my life. My vision for this podcast is to introduce 100,000 kids to climbing and to connect you with athletes and entrepreneurs. Thanks for being part of this journey, and let's take hold together. Welcome everyone to another episode of the iLL podcast. I'm really excited today. I have a really good friend of mine who is calling in, and I don't know that he needs a big introduction. KJ, as I call him, Kevin Jorgeson. We started working together a couple years ago on some side projects, which we'll talk about here in this podcast, but he is a world famous climber, incredibly strong on the wall. And beyond that, he's just a really thoughtful guy. So we've had really good relationship, just chatting together. I've learned a lot from him. He's thoughtful, just his life planning beyond just rock climbing, and also just in general, just a really good guy. So, Kevin, I'm excited to have you here, and let's jump into it.
All right. Yeah, I'm stoked to be here.
When did we plan this? Like 2 days ago?
Yeah, that's how we roll.
I like how we just get stuff done. Like everyone else just talks about getting stuff done.
No, let's just have your people talk to my people, and maybe we can make this happen like 6 months from now.
Yeah, that is no good at all.
Yeah, that's not how I roll. We're either going to do this now or never.
Yep. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from my home in Santa Rosa, California.
Awesome. Were you affected by the fires that were out there recently?
Oh, man. I mean, everyone that lives here was affected one way or another. I wasn't affected in the sense that my house burned down, but a lot of my friends' houses burned down, and just the impact on the community and the economy is it's right in front of you. You know, there's still a lot of scar tissue. It's going to take a lot of time for this area to recover.
Wow.
From
just
that disaster.
People personally too, not just their possessions.
Yeah, totally.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you guys are okay.
Thanks. Yeah, we got lucky.
So normally when I start the podcast, I like to ask you if you can to just take 1 second and try to clear your head and just kind of step back if you can to the day that you went climbing for the very first time. And sometimes, even when I did it, I was confused a little bit, thinking oh, that was the first time I climbed. Well, sometimes that's a memory of a first send or a first time in the gym or something like that. But then I thought, because I had forgotten and went back to the time that I actually went climbing for the very first time. And I'm wondering if you can kind of just take us with you and step back and let us know what it was like.
Oh, man. When people ask me when, where, or how I started climbing, what I most often say is that I've never stopped. And I think that's probably the most true way that I could put it, because my experience with climbing predates my memory, according to my parents.
Wow.
I've always just been climbing up things. Whenever they couldn't find me, they would have to look up in trees or on top of the, cupboard or fence or roof or you name it. Just going up has always been an innate part of my experience, apparently. I think my first time on an actual rock climbing wall was probably at some kind of outdoor fair type thing.
Like a carnival?
So my dad worked for the city of Santa Rosa in the Rec and Park department, and they had an annual thing, outdoor fair thing, and they had a little pop-up wall. So there's a photo of me at age 8 or 9 on that wall.
Wow.
But I went to the grand opening of a local gym when I was about 11, and that's kind of when it started to become more frequent and started to become a thing, focusing just on rock climbing. But climbing up things has always been a part of what I do.
That's cool. So maybe it started, did it just feel natural to you the first time you actually saw a wall and you were well, I've done this on trees and I've done this as a kid. So it felt like a normal thing?
It's innate. Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like food, I go without it for too long, and it's so unnatural for me not to climb. When I'm climbing, it's just this is what I'm meant to do, it feels like.
Wow. I liked how you said that, where's Kevin? He's going up. And It's kind of cool because I feel like a lot of people, online that follow you or, like your even maybe like your friends or your family at some point, and like even myself, I know we have a good relationship and we catch up maybe like every 2 weeks or something like that. But a lot of time too, I'm like, where's Kevin? And I know you're on the wall. I just don't know where.
Yep, pretty much.
That's never really stopped since you were, since the beginning, since you were a kid.
Yeah, no, it hasn't, and it won't. It'll never stop. The proportions of, how I spend my time climbing versus everything else will likely, ebb and flow and flux throughout my life, but it'll always be a portion of it.
Yeah. Do you feel like since you've gotten, older with more responsibilities and married now and things like that, do you feel like climbing has adapted to your lifestyle, or do you feel like there's a like a pull or a push there?
Not sure how to answer that. I think that climbing, like my relationship with it is going to evolve, and sometimes it's been the only thing I focus on and my only interest. And as I've gotten older, I'm 33 now, I think my interests just get more diverse. Like I got bored just thinking about climbing rocks all the time, like I don't think it's ever been the thing that fulfills me entirely.
Wow.
If climbing was the only thing that I do, I think I would be bored. So I need more than just climbing to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
And that definitely is more true today than it's ever been. So I think just what it means to me and how it adds to that cup, that's being filled, just changes with time.
Right. Yeah, that's cool, man. I feel like when in the intro, I just kind of talked about you always like being thoughtful and having something else going on besides climbing. And I know it's like super true with you. I know a lot of climbers I talk to, like that's it. Like that's all they're doing. That's all they're worried about. That's all they care about, which is amazing. But for other people, fulfillment can come in different ways. And since you've been able to grow as you've grown up, climbing, adapting with that and finding other means of fulfillment is really, really cool too. And you're doing lots of big things and lots of other projects outside of climbing. Can you talk a little bit? I know we'll get into one climb things here in a little
Sure.
bit, but can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the other projects you do on the professional side, whether it's through sponsors or other types of partnerships you might have or other things you're doing within the industry?
Yeah. So let's see. Going back in time a little bit, I think the first expression of this was a nonprofit that I started in 2009 called Pro Climbers International. And the objective there was really to just provide more opportunity for athletes to support themselves outside of their sponsorships. My observation was that there was no middle class when it comes to this career path. And unfortunately, I think that's still true. It's very much like the haves and have-nots. So by creating a nationwide pro clinic series and marketing that to youth teams and just any climber that wanted to improve, it gave athletes an opportunity to share their passion and also earn a little extra income on the side, which was great. And that went on for a couple of years, but that was like the first expression of me spending time and being passionate about not just my own climbing and my objectives and trying to build something for other people, and trying to inspire the next generation by really closing the loop between someone who starts climbing, gets really good at it, becomes a pro. I wanted to bring them back to the people who are just starting again and make that loop whole again, so that, if I had the opportunity to learn from Fred Nicole when I was starting climbing, you bet I would have taken that up. That'd be a memory I'd cherish for the rest of my life. So I just wanted to create experiences that I would want to have if I could go back in time. That was kind of the whole thing there.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was the first expression of it, but it keeps iterating with time and getting more specific, I think.
Right. For the PCI, did you guys do like tours, or was it more like one-off stop type events like you had at our gym?
Yeah, it was mostly one-offs. We'd go back to certain gyms multiple times per year, maybe once in the spring, once in the fall, but we didn't, for example, like release a whole 6-month schedule of the clinics.
Gotcha. Okay.
They just took so much time to organize with the local coaches and the gyms and things like that. So
schedules of athletes and everything else, right?
Totally, man. Yeah, it was a lot of logistics. It was a good learning experience, though.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I remember when you guys came to the gym, and I was like on my way up there, and I was like, gosh, they've traveled. They're probably tired. They need to teach. They need to do all this stuff. I knew you had a little bit of time before you started, and so Hannah and I went, and I rolled into like a local coffee house and like got a bunch of coffee. I'm like, I'm gonna get them coffee, and like maybe something to snack on or whatever. And I remember like trying to get all these coffees and like brought them back in my car and like spilled them everywhere and like burnt my hands and like walked in with like trash basically. It was like, here you guys go. I hope it's okay.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that was one of the first times like we all got to hang out. I feel like that was kind of the starting point of our partnership and relationship.
Yeah. Did that initially come through my brother Dave just on the gym side?
I think it did. Yeah, I'm trying to remember if we did. We might have had a speaking thing at the same time at the university.
Oh yeah, definitely.
With Sasha and Daniel. I don't know if that came first, and then we decided to link it. I don't know how it all came together. It's too long ago. But
yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah. I remember it was a big deal for just our community in St. Louis because, like you said, like beginner climbers, intermediate climbers, even they don't, or even really strong climbers that don't get the opportunity to like travel and maybe see you guys out at different areas around the world. Having you guys come to St. Louis and having an evening and getting to listen to you not only speak but also climb, I think is really special. And I don't know if that's just like St. Louis, our demographic, our location where we're at. Did you find it when you travel to other cities, like in the coasts and things like that it was the same way, or did you have? Was it like was it different like depending on where you were at?
Totally. That was one of the things that make it so challenging is that every market was so different. You had to tailor the event differently if you were going to New York versus Portland or Dallas or St. Louis we went all over the place. So figuring out, what folks' priorities are climbing wise, what the team is focusing on, what the gym has to offer terrain wise, all of that kind of dictated all the way down to like which athletes we tried to bring in,
Wow.
How old they were, what kind of climbing they were known for, what they were good at teaching, and just everything was super customized.
That's cool, man. That goes back to like number one, where's Kevin? Like you're traveling all over the country, but also you being thoughtful because most athletes like a lot of them when they tour, they're gonna be like, hey, I'm coming through. I can do like a slideshow or something like that, and you can tell they haven't really prepared and they just like threw a couple slides together the night before. They don't want to speak or they don't want to speak at all. They just want to climb and. Like, or they just want to tour with their buddies and go hang out. And like, this was totally different thing for you. Like for you to think about, the type of climber at that location and matching them up with an athlete that you think would be amazing and having that curriculum built and talking points and discussion. Like that was way beyond what I've heard of anybody else doing who's put together a tour like that.
I think I'm just a nerd is what it comes down to,
You just can't help it, man.
I just can't help it. Like I ask a lot of questions and I'm kind of a nerd and I want to do something cool.
I love it, man. So, and you probably get asked about this a lot, but, I know those days kind of, go back and forth in your mind, but What was it like, if we can step into the Dawn Wall? I'm kind of curious to hear your take on it. I know we've talked about it a little bit. And for me, just the story alone is like a wild thing. I mean, two things happened to me. One of them was my wife's grandmother called me, and she lives in a town of like 400 people in the middle of nowhere. And she called me and was like, and she first she Snapchatted me. She got a Snapchat account.
Get out.
No, seriously. And because she realized that all of her grandkids are on Snapchat, and that's the only way they'll communicate with her. So I get this Snapchat from her, and I'm like, whoa. So then she calls me, and she's asking all about the wall, all about if I know the guys on it, what they're doing. And so that happened, and I was like, wow, okay, if she's heard about it, this is crazy. And then we had this dude deliver a bunch of pallets of stuff to the warehouse at one point. And I don't know where he was from, but he was just like, did you, he asked what we made, and we're like, we make some climbing stuff. He's like, rock climbing, like, I cannot believe the wall. Tommy and those guys up on the wall, like, man, that was amazing, and going on and on about it. So I knew it had went big, and like, we didn't get to talk till much later, but I thought, like, and just being like a marketing type person, like, I thought that's where my head's at all the time. I was thinking that you guys that there was like through sponsors or through media or through like this strategic plan, because I know how well of like a planner you are. I was like, man, these guys, they've planned this. Like, they knew they were going to probably do it, and they created like the most amazing PR. Like, they stopped the internet, they stopped TV, they stopped the world for a day. And I was like, this is incredible. And I just kind of figured that was what happened, because that it was like funny, a month plan, but turns out not at all.
Yeah, it turns out we had no control over it whatsoever. Start, middle, or finish.
Wow.
It just emerged. Yeah, there was no. I mean, we were using our social media the same way we had for 6 years. Nothing changed there. It just got picked up and took on a life of its own.
Wow. Oh, man, there was another instance we got a call. My brother got a call from a local news company, and we were like, they're like, we want to do a story on you. And we're like, okay, great. Any publicity that you can get for the climbing gym is good in a local market. So bring your film crews up. Like, we'll do this thing. And the guy comes in, it's like 6:30 in the morning. He's getting ready. And like, I think they even went live or something. And they're like, so Dave, what do you know about Kevin and the Dawn Wall? The Dawn Wall, like, can you talk about that a little bit? And we're like, wait a second, we thought this interview was going to be about the climbing gym.
Yeah. Oh man.
So thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. Oh my God.
How did it start? Like, you said it was just tweets and things like that. Was there like a retweet or a phone call you got or something that you were like, this is going to get really big? Like, was there a moment you realized that it was going to be huge?
So I do remember a distinct moment. I even took a snapshot, like a screenshot of it on my phone, and I'm trying to find it because I got a Twitter notification that New York Times Sports had started following me. And I was like, man. Huh, And then 2 seconds later, this fellow named John Branch followed and then sent me a message. And I look him up, and he's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. I'm like, oh shit.
Wow.
This is crazy. And he's like, hey, my editor or boss or whatever, wants me to do a piece on you guys. Like, would you be willing to hop on the phone? And that was like pretty novel for us, right? We're like, oh, that's kind of crazy. All right.
Wow.
So I talked to Tommy, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. We have what people don't maybe think about is how much downtime we have up there.
Okay.
When you're taking a rest day, you've got like 14 hours to just hang out, So it was no big deal to have a little phone call. So we did, and John wrote a story. And I've talked to him since, and he didn't think that there was anything particularly special about the story. Like, there was nothing that made him think that this was going to go big. But as soon as it was posted onto the New York Times website, it just started getting all the traffic.
Wow.
Tons of questions in the comment threads and lots of shares and stuff like that. And then his editor asked him to write a follow-up. And then one after that. And then one after that. And then, yeah, it just kind of snowballed. So we did that call with John. And then I think 2 days later, we got a interview request with NPR. And we said yes to that also.
Wow.
But then I think it was that same day, we kind of had a little huddle. And we're like, this is distracting. Let's turn down everything. So we did. We did the John interview once, and we did the NPR thing with Terry Gross once. And then we declined and didn't respond to any other inquiries for the rest of the trip.
Wow.
We just forwarded them to other people to answer.
Okay. Do you think maybe that was part of like what built the anticipation, is that you guys did a few interviews, like we're working on this, is what we're doing, and then radio silence and everyone like was waiting to hear good news?
I don't know, man. I think it's really easy to overanalyze like why that story became big, but I think the answer is quite simple. It was just like a really classic like hero's journey drama playing out in a place that everybody's heard of.
In real life, right.
In Yosemite, on a wall that everyone's seen before, or at least they can like appreciate it when they see it. Like El Cap was the canvas for this drama to be playing out. And it played out over such a long period of time, like 7 or 10 days, like start to finish from when it got picked up, that it was something that people could check in on, and there was hardship, me getting stuck, and there's Tommy's support and his backstory being super interesting. And so it had all these elements of just like, there's a team and there's an underdog, and then he triumphs, and then they top out together, and it's a feel good story, and it's turning the new year. So, everyone's kind of hopeful in January with the new year. And I think that it was just a story that people kind of needed at that time. There were those terrorist attacks in Paris at the same time, the Charlie Hebdo terrorist attacks. So there's a lot of bad news going on. So I think, it was just good news at the right time, in the right place.
That's cool, man, because the news in general can be a little bit depressing. So it's nice it's so nice to have them report on something like positive and encouraging for people versus the other side.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it.
That's cool, man. What opportunities came from finishing that long-term project? And like once you got finished up, like I'm sure you did more interviews and things like that, but was there any other types of things that happened after you finished the project that you were like, well, this is actually pretty cool, that may have been, that experience may have helped push your way?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, it was like, I'm sure the reporting of it wasn't like always the most accurate, because big wall free climbing's confusing even to a climber to understand.
Yeah, me too.
But
right.
I kind of like started to let that go at the end of the day, because people weren't following along and inspired because they understood the nuance of big wall free climbing tactics and rules. They followed along because they were inspired by the effort and the duration we'd been working on it, and the challenge and the partnership and things like that. And to me, that's harmless.
Yeah,
that's great. If that's what people are going to take away, they're just going to be inspired and think about what they want to accomplish. That's pretty harmless. So, I was stoked that was the result, that people were inspired, and we'd meet people all over the world that would come up to us and just tell them, how it made them look at their life and think about what they want to accomplish as well. Maybe something they had put off or things like that. So I just thought that was like probably the coolest thing to come out of it. I mean, as something that you can accomplish, like inspiring someone, that's kind of up there in my personal list of of cool things you can do, with your time and effort.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I like how your answer wasn't, I got on this big commercial or I did this big thing. It was like talking to an individual person that you found maybe needed help or struggled in an area or put something off, and you were able to encourage them to change things. It's like, I never really thought about it on such a personal level like you just explained. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, our hope is that maybe, again, this wasn't by design, this was by accident, but even so, even if you can move the needle, even temporarily for someone, that's great.
Yeah.
What a great outcome.
Yeah, it's actually a really, really beautiful thing. Did you get to meet President Obama through this, or was that a different time?
It came a little bit later. Apparently he was trying to call us like a day or two afterwards.
Your phone's on mute.
I was taking a nap, actually.
I love it.
I literally woke up to these. I turned on my phone and it was these frantic text messages from someone who was helping us manage all this stuff and saying, "Where are you? Where are you? President Obama's trying to call." And it was just like 4 messages. I was like, "Whoops."
That's incredible.
So we never got to talk to him, but I did get to shake his hand for like half a second when he came to Yosemite a couple years ago.
Okay.
But he didn't recognize me or remember or anything like that. It was just, I somehow got on the list and was able to watch his speech and shake his hand afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sleeping, man. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. So good.
Yeah.
So what, can you talk about the timeline? Like, I know after you finished that project, like were there, and I'm kind of leading up towards working on One Climb together, but were there other climbing projects, or were you like, from that experience where you were able to help a bunch of people, were you like, I want to do something else to help people as well? Did kind of those feelings and things like that start way prior to that project, and it kind of carried through that project, and then you maybe started focusing on One Climb after that, or kind of what was that series of events where you've kind of realized like, I want to help people and not just go climbing?
Yeah. So I think there were a couple of things at play. One, looking back, I think there was this rubber band effect of being in such a bright spotlight for a minute there. I just didn't want to be in the spotlight anymore, and like kind of actively avoided that. So that kind of leads to having a motivation to work on other things, other than the next big badass climb.
Right.
And in 2010, part of PCI's effort was to introduce climbing to more people. And the way that we did it is we did a little pilot project. This was back in 2010. We put a climbing wall in a school and in a boys and girls club in a city of 10,000 people that had no exposure to climbing whatsoever, almost as an experiment to see if it could get traction and if people would like it. And they loved it. Both those walls are still used as part of the PE curriculum at the school and as part of the summer camps at the Boys and Girls Club. And it kind of planted the seed for, man, like maybe there's something to this idea of putting walls in front of kids where they're already spending time. But that was kind of it as far as the idea.
Wow. And
then after the Dawn Wall, all these doors were open as far as opportunity wise. I was like, okay, what can I do with this moment? And then I remember this project that we did in Sonoma. I was like, man, it'd be really cool to turn that into its own thing. Instead of it being one of many things that PCI was doing, what if that idea was a standalone effort? And that was kind of the genesis of One Climb. We called it One Climb because One Climb has the opportunity to, totally change the trajectory of a kid's life for the better. And the idea is it's the same one we had in Sonoma. Like, let's put walls in a boys and girls clubs around the country, because what a great infrastructure. They serve 4.5 million kids a year. There's over 4,000 clubs spread across the country. So why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's when I started just kind of knocking on doors and seeing if I couldn't find some partners to help me turn that really simple idea into an actual program, you know?
Wow. Yeah. Well, so when we first talked about it, we were like, what? We talked to Outdoor Retailer
Yeah.
because we were both there, and like we were just chit chatting about whatever because you had visited our gym and we were going to catch up and stuff like that. What was that like? Like, when you started talking with me about one climb, like where were you at with it in the process? I know you had one wall done, but were you like this is going to be a thing, or were you like putting feelers out there and talking to a bunch of people at the show? Like where were you at in your mind at that time?
I think I was looking for momentum. Like climbing, especially if it's a big project, some things are really hard to do on your own. And just finding a partner can totally shift the momentum around an idea. So it's something that I wanted to do. And my ears and eyes were open for finding other people who would get passionate about this idea. But when we met, I think I was just in that mode of trying to make the idea contagious.
Right. Right.
And that's kind of where it was. And I was willing to look in lots of different places in order to do that.
Right.
Turns out I didn't have to look very far. I didn't have to go outside of the climbing world, at least right away. I didn't have to go pitch a stranger or anything like that. It was just talking to my buddies, at the trade show.
Yeah, and it happened. Man,
yeah.
And I don't know if we talked about this at all, but it's so that sequence like of events of you leading up to us meeting at Outdoor Retailer. Like, I had been going through a weird time in general. Like, I love the creative process of the brand we're building. I love working on new things. I love jumping into the deep end of the pool and like drowning and being like, how now I got to figure this out. But at the same time, like, I spend 50 hours a week, like leading the team here and behind the computer and traveling and stuff like that. And for a few months leading up to that conversation, this was the first time this had happened to me, like since I started the brand, like, a decade prior or longer. But I was like kind of in a weird spot. And for some reason, like, I just started feeling like, man, like, even though this stuff's cool and I love it and believe in it, my heart's behind it, blood, sweat, and tears, like, am I just selling widgets? Like, am I just getting stuff made and then we're like, marketing it and then we're putting it out? And like, for forever it was like, I want to create products that allow people to look good and feel good, to help them succeed, like when they're climbing, right? But even with that idea in mind that like kept me sane for so long, I was still like, am I just getting this, making this thing, getting money for it, like paying these expenses, shipping this thing out? And I was like struggling, like looking for an opportunity to be able to help people. And, but I've also like, I had some ideas in the past, but I fought it too, because, one time I was in line at the grocery store and we'll talk about Tom's here in a little bit, who started like a worldwide revolution. But I was like, I saw a pack of gum and it said like, buy this pack of gum and we'll give a pack of gum to a child in need, or something like that. And I was like, this is getting insane. Like, this is just pandering off the poor. So I had all these like small ideas, but I couldn't figure it out, because every hipster, millennial business like has some sort of give. And I didn't want it to be like, I actually had a desire to like do something interesting and help people, versus just like doing it because businesses do it. So when we sat down at OR and you were like, I was like, what else is going on? We chit chatted and then you told me what you had done. To me, man, like, I don't know if you realized it, but like time stopped for me. The busyness of the trade show, how crazy it was, all my meetings, like I'm meeting with REI for the first time and I'm meeting with all these big people and talking to athletes and all these new product lines. And it was just like, shoom. And it was like, I listened, like my gut was like, this is it. Like, so I actually do like, and I know we talk a lot, but I'm incredibly grateful and thankful to be able to use the resources that I've built on this, on the product side. So we've had some back end resources to be able to build One Climb and to carry out your vision. And I hope I do a good job. Like when we talk of like, is this okay? What do you think about this project?
Yeah.
What about this fundraising idea? Like, I just, I have a lot of stuff, but I want you to drive the boat. And because this is your thing, I'm really thankful to be a part of it.
Well, it wouldn't be happening if it wasn't our thing. I think, and it can be hard sometimes, but the sign of something succeeding is it not being yours anymore. And I'm sure you experienced this with So Will, like you're creating this brand and releasing these products. And it's like, it's not just like, you don't get to make all the calls, you don't get to make every decision and be responsible for every aspect of it anymore. There's a level of trust that you have to place in those who also believe in what you're doing. And I think that's a sign of success, So I couldn't be more grateful that it's resonated with you to the extent that it has, because I don't have those back end resources of a small business at my disposal to deploy toward this idea. Like I could build them from scratch, but you've already got them. And you're like, oh yeah, I got a guy. I'll just build a website. Boom. There's a website next week. I'm like, whoa. Like, hey, I want to call it this, but we don't have a logo. And then like, boom, there's a logo. I'm like, whoa, that was cool. I'm like, oh, we should probably incorporate it as like a real nonprofit. And then like, boom, there's the paperwork. I'm like, whoa.
Good. Yeah. And a lot of that was
this is crazy.
People in the office are like, wait, you want me to do 2 jobs now?
Right.
But they all love the idea. So it's all just like part of, it's part of it. And I've even had like, not only the people that work here, like a bookkeeper who keeps all the finances together for our company because I'm, kind of a creative or whatever, but just on that side, but, her and then her friend and then her friend's husband who's a CPA, and they're all like, they were just over here yesterday, like, hey, how can we help One Climb? Like, what we see what you guys are doing. Like, do you need me to look at the books? Do you need me to, help with anything? So it's like having this passion that you've started that is able to carry forward has started reaching like, not only day-to-day people, but their families and then other people's as well. It's pretty neat. Can you talk a little bit about the St. Louis project and what that was like from, I know the first wall, you just built it yourself, you paid for it yourself, you just went for it, and it's incredible. Moving into like working with the team and who some of the partners were and how that felt different as you went through the process.
Totally. One of the things I appreciate is working with you is you keep it simple, because like it's really easy to take a big idea like, hey, Dan, I want to get 1 million kids climbing and here's how I want to do it. And we're just like pie in the sky. It's like, oh, it could be like this or it could be like that. And you're like, let's build one. Like, oh, okay.
You're like, just one at first.
Let's build another one. Like, okay, yeah, let's build another one. Where should we do it? Let's do it where I already am, in St. Louis. I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what was great is that it gave us the opportunity to mature the idea, So it started in Sonoma, as basic as it gets, and there were things that worked great, and there are things that totally didn't work at all. One of the things that didn't work is that the gym, the commercial climbing gym that was supposed to serve as the partner of these kids' walls, was too far away in proximity. In order for it to be easy for the staff to help serve that wall and for them to feel a connection to it. So with St. Louis, when we looked things up and saw how close the Boys and Girls Club facility was to Climb So Will, I was like, that's the first thing I want to change with the next version of this program is I want to get these two things closer together. Because I think if we do that, the quality of the programming and the maintenance of the wall and the relationship between the climbing community and the kids will just be so much tighter, So it gave us this cool opportunity to iterate and also kind of professionalize key aspects of this program rolling out.
Right.
So that was like the best part about doing it in St. Louis. It's like, okay, we've got boots on the ground there, and we can try to improve upon everything that we started with in Sonoma.
Yeah, you're right. It's really cool, like, because you had learned a bunch of stuff, and then a few things, what to do, what not to do, those relationship, building things where you want to have the local climbing gym help the wall get going, and the route setting and staff training and all that stuff. And then at the same time, like, it was the first time I had done it, so I was like, this is crazy. Like, we've got our staff rolling over there, and like, I called our insurance guy. I'm like, hey, we're building this climbing wall. And he's like, no, you're not. He's like, you need a wall partner. So, El Dorado stepped up in a huge way, which was awesome. But then, during the construction portion, I'm like, well, they need help. We're going to send our staff over. And he's like, you actually have, under your insurance, you can have 2 volunteer days per staff per year at like a community project without having to pay like a specialized insurance or specialized permits for workers' comp and all this stuff. So I've got photos of like, our little like, customer service or sales girl, like with a giant drill in her hand, and our warehouse shipping people like rolling paint on the wall. So we were just like, get it done, and then there's I wanted to document it for you and in case we want to build more and tell our story. So I'm like getting a hold of the best video people I know and like begging them to help. And they cut their rates by like 90% and said they would do it. And then I'm like, oh, cool. Thanks, man. Well, we want to cover all of the construction, time lapse of steel going up. So can you go every day for like 2 weeks? And at that point they couldn't say no, but we were just like, we were flying by the seat of our pants,
Totally. And that's just how it goes. Even if you pick a simple next step, you still just gotta improvise and like make it happen. That's part of the fun of it.
Yeah, it was really cool. In the video, you talk a little bit about, because you flew in and we did the grand opening, and you were able to talk to the kids and do some climbing to like show them what it was all about. Can you talk a little bit about seeing the wall for the first time and like what that grand opening was like in St. Louis?
Totally. Like I said before, having a partner and having an idea, and then the next week there being a website, or the next week after that there being a logo. I'm in California. I'm a long way away. Like, I know that things are being worked on, but then when I land in St. Louis and see this wall that was donated, like El Dorado gave us the wall, gave us the labor, like for free. That's crazy.
It's amazing.
It's totally crazy. You're like, roll up to this beautiful Boys and Girls Club and see the most immaculate wall they've ever built, according to them. They had so much pride in that wall, even though it was 900 square feet.
Yeah,
tiny.
Dude.
There was just so much love and attention to detail into that wall. I was like, this is next level. This is, something's happening here.
Yeah.
Just, you could, by the amount of care that was being put into it, you could tell that there was something going on. So it's super emotional. I think I said in the video, I was like, whoa. Because it to take something from a concept and then be standing there and touching it, and then the next day seeing kids climb on it, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, coming back to the thing that really resonated post Dawnwall was the fact that people were inspired. What a great outcome. And then here to be able to provide this opportunity to kids who have never seen a climbing wall before, they're going to remember that. And for some kids, they're going to keep climbing. Even if one kid from St. Louis keeps climbing for the rest of their life, like, that's a win in my book.
Yeah.
So it's just super, super fulfilling.
Yeah. It's really neat, man. And it was like, I didn't, I know a lot of people don't know, and you maybe can tell from some of the video or maybe not, but like, the neighborhood's really bad up there. Like, it's actually really bad. And a lot of those kids, they really do have they get dropped off like before school for like before school stuff at like 6 a.m. by grandma. They're They're there till 8. They do breakfast at school. They do school all day. They get bused to the Boys and Girls Club. They're there till, 6, 7, 8 p.m. at night. Grandma comes, picks them up, or our mom or dad takes them home. And then they do the same thing like the next day. And I learned a lot of this because I was able to talk through the process of building, and lots of trips up there, and like, we want to build you a climbing wall, and they didn't even know what it was. And like, it like really, it's a different world up there, man. Like there were kids walking by during the construction being like, stopping in the gym and being like, what is that? What are you building? What is that? And then like, even after the grand opening, when the kids climbed the wall and like loved it and like understood, they were like, one kid came up to me and was like, oh, you guys have to take the wall down now? Where are you moving the wall? And I'm like, no. Like, this wall is staying. Wow. This wall is for you guys. Right. But yeah, it's really like, it got me, out of my comfort zone. And it was cool because the club is only like, we'll go downtown and go to like, concerts or things like that, or like go out to a nice dinner or whatever. This is like 5 miles from like, $1 million homes and things like that. But you just head into North St. Louis and it's just a different atmosphere. But I just really, the whole process for me was like humbling. And I liked how there wasn't, at the grand opening, there wasn't like a bunch of press, and like we invite all these news people and all this stuff. And like, if that stuff can help the club and bring them funding in the future, that's great. But like, I just definitely didn't want to be the guy who like, just like showed up and, did this thing and like coming in to help people and then like takes off. And I think that's what resonated with me when you talk so much about the relationship that the gym will have with the Boys and Girls Club, is like, they're not just like, okay, we did our thing and bye. It's a really long-term relationship.
Yep, it sure is. It sure is. And that's probably the crux of it, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's also like the most compelling part in my book. And Blake from Tom's, had this theory, and I think he's right, that like, people innately want to help. They want to give back, but they're not hopping on Google typing in like, how do I give back in my local community? They need to be given the opportunity, presented the opportunity. And I think that's what One Climb is doing for a lot of commercial climbing gyms that care. It gives them an opportunity to do something they've been wanting to do, but haven't cracked the code on how to do themselves.
That's interesting.
And at least that's how I feel with Touchstone. They've been, with the next wall going into LA, they're like, wow, we've been looking for something like this. Like, we want to give back, our members want to give back, but we just don't know where to look or how to do it. But what each one of these walls does is it turns on a faucet, or maybe even a flood of interest in the sport, with kids and communities that have maybe never seen this sport before. And that's the kind of exposure that's necessary. And that's the kind of help that we need from, whether it's an employee of Touchstone or a member of Touchstone, to help cultivate that relationship and broaden the community to make our sport more inclusive and more diverse.
Super good, man. Touchstone has been awesome. Like the girls there and Jeffrey and all them, like, they come in to do the site visit in LA and working through like, the packet that we have of saying, hey, we want you to, foster this relationship and do the setting. And they've had groups from the Boys and Girls Club over there to their gym to like start, getting to know climbing. And they're planning the grand opening with us. Like, to have somebody step up like that, and understand like the vision and everything else it's really neat, man. I really hope we can find partners like that, in the next cities as well.
Totally. They've gone above and beyond, just like what I could have ever imagined. In the same way that you've gone above and beyond, they're kind of making it their own. Mm-hmm. They're like, hey, I remember early on, Touchstone's like, okay, yeah, we can do all that, because we kind of outlined the kind of help we need. But they're like, let's not limit it to that, because we're going to come up with ideas down the road that we can't even think of right now. We just want the latitude to do more. We're all, do more? Yeah.
Like
That
what?
would be
Right.
great. They're like, yeah, for the kids that are old enough to work and like wanna work in a climbing gym, like we'll give them a job. I'm like, holy shit, I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Or scholarship them into the youth team, or teach them how to belay or whatever. It's just like, oh, okay. I mean, that's the kind of depth in a partnership that's really going to transform this idea into something lasting.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Do you know, because I know when we started this thing, it was like, let's just build climbing walls. And then we realized like, wow, like insurance, partners, like they take forever, right? So it's, the St. Louis took us, year and a half maybe or 2 years from idea to open. And I know they'll go faster now, but like during that time, we were like, man, this is just taking a long time. So we were like, let's deploy day passes also. And that's in the video when I go to Chicago and we walk that group of kids from the Boys and Girls Club over there. But can you talk a little bit about that difference and like as we move forward in the future, what that looks like building walls versus deploying day passes?
Totally. So the objective is to get more kids into the sport, right? And there's 2 ways to do it. You can take them climbing or you can bring them climbing. Building climbing walls is a way of bringing them climbing, right? We're taking a wall and we're putting it in front of them like, ta-da, like a gift. Boom. We've brought you access to the sport.
Love it.
But we can also take them climbing. And that's where this idea of deploying day passes is. So maybe there is a club down the street, or maybe we partner with organizations other than the Boys and Girls Club, like Big Brothers Big Sisters. Give Atlanta or San Francisco or Oakland or any city 50 day passes to the local climbing gym and spread them out throughout the nonprofits in the community and just remove the price barrier. Boom. Just make that disappear.
Yep.
How awesome. I mean, what a small step, but an easy step to just reducing the friction for people to try it, And that's not even, we haven't even pushed on that strategy very hard at all yet.
Yep, it's next.
I think that's going to be like the gas on the fire.
Yeah, because you can only build so many walls and only build them so fast.
Right.
But yeah, deploying day passes is like, man, I think it's going to get crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you talk a little bit about how you met Blake and Blake from Tom's, the chief shoe giver, kind of how that relationship started, and then talk through that process of him getting to know you as a person, but also One Climb, and talk a little bit about that relationship with Tom's for the LA project.
Yeah. So, speaking of crazy things that happened after the Dommel, I found myself on a cruise ship giving a talk. And I was probably like the least, I was like the smallest name on the bill for sure. There were a lot of really cool people on that boat. But
you're cool
so I'm
too,
sitting on
Kevin.
I'm sitting on a portal ledge, strapped to a fake climbing wall on a cruise ship off the coast of Miami. I mean, I'm like totally out of my element, right? Like I've never been on a cruise ship before. But neither has this other guy. And this other guy that happened to be in the audience right then was Blake Mycoskie, and he's the founder of Tom Shoes. And Blake was going through a moment in time where he was trying to figure out what's next for him and for Tom's. And that was kind of the whole theme of my talk. So he came up to me afterwards and introduced himself, and we chatted a little bit and exchanged contact info. And that was really the start of what's turned into an awesome friendship. And it was on a climbing trip a year ago in the Grand Tetons that, it was a big day. It was like a 22-hour car-to-car day. So we had a lot of time to talk on the trail. And I shared with him this vision of One Climb. And it resonated with him, just, in a similar way that it resonated for you. And we didn't know how we were going to team up. We didn't know what was going to come of it, but I could tell that it resonated really deeply. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And that was the start. And then what came of that was, let's do a wall together. Kind of like you said, let's just do one. Except
Yeah.
Blake lives in LA and Tom's is in LA. So we're like, okay, let's do a wall in LA. So here we are.
Wow. Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. I remember, so once I started thinking more and more about this and like staying up at night and just being like, man, how can we do this? How can this get started? How can I help Kevin? How can we scale this? How can we build more walls? Like it's a dark hole of like ideas and stuff like that. And for some reason, like in my gut, Tom's kept coming up. And I knew that Blake was like actually a climber. Like he got it. He climbed at the gym. He would go outside occasionally. Like he gets it. And I had met like a PR person for Tom's at the CWA actually. And I just randomly, I was like, hey, I'm working on this thing. And if I sent you some information, like, could you get it to Blake? Like, is that possible? And they were like, he's kind of hard to get to. I'm on the PR side. There's hundreds of employees and things like that. But I'll try my best or whatever. So, she had sent us some free Tom shoes because that was like her thing that she was doing. And that was totally cool. But I remember calling you after the CWA and being like, dude, I met this girl who works at Tom's and I can't stop thinking about this. For some reason, I feel like they might be interested in helping, and at the time it wasn't even called One Climb, but helping build the walls for kids. And you were like, yeah, dude, do you want me to just text Blake? I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
That's right. I forgot about that. That's exactly what happened. So I think that must have happened before that Grand Teton climbing
Okay. Yeah.
trip. Yeah. Exactly. That's funny.
But so you're like, I texted him and like, I didn't hear, I didn't hear back later. And I was like, it's okay. It was a good shot, and then, we talked later and you're like, I'm going to text him again. So you text him again and he responds immediately. And turns out like, we thought they weren't interested in helping and he just didn't see your text message.
Right.
Like, it's so funny. And, I think he was like, man, I'd love to meet with you guys and talk to you about it. And like, I think that was on like a Saturday and he was available like Monday morning. And you called me and I'm like, well, guess we're going to LA. So I bought my ticket the next day and it was like, I just put on my credit card. It was like $1,000. And I was just like, dude, I'm going. Like, I'm going to go. So we went and I got to meet him. And for me, it was a big deal because I've been, I've loved what that brand was up to for, since the very beginning. And like, I know there's been a lot of businesses that have come, like giving businesses and things like that. They're like, we give back. And it's awesome. But also looking at Tom's, they changed the world with that idea. And when we sat down with their giving team, like it hit me like a ton of bricks. They said we've given away 70 million pairs of shoes to kids.
Right.
And so when I compare that to like going into Whole Foods and seeing a jar of coconut oil that gives a jar of coconut oil to someone in need, and maybe they just feel like they're just kind of like doing it just because they're doing it and they've given away one jar to a friend or something, like comparing that to helping 70 million people and sticking to that over the years, I just have such a respect for for Blake and for that organization, even as they've been like growing and changing and that type of thing. Like for them to stick with that is like, it's insane, man.
Yeah, it's a big deal for sure.
And they had a coffee bar, which was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, anything that is a coffee bar, I'm all in. I know. I mean, kind of like how this came together in 2 days, you just follow that momentum. And Blake's like, yeah, let's meet up. I was like, okay, how about tomorrow? And he's like, all right, Monday, LA. I was like, oh shit. I hope Dan can get a ticket.
Oh, I got a ticket, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, it was so awesome.
It's funny. There's all these like entrepreneurs who are writing like, they're all over the place online. Like a lot of them haven't ever done anything, but they're like the new hot entrepreneur talking about like, this is how you do it and encouraging and all this stuff, which is cool. If they're resonating with people, that's awesome. But I always joke around with Hannah, like one of these days I want to write a book that's like, the key to entrepreneurship, whatever. And you open up this big book and there's like one page in it and it just says, just show up.
Right.
And for
Right.
me, it was like that was what this meeting was when we went out to Blake, and then he introduced us to their entire giving team. It was like, dude, we just had to go. Like, it didn't matter that it was Monday, like, or whatever. Like, let's just go.
It's great advice. You know, you don't have to know exactly how it's going to come together. You just gotta go. Just gotta show up. That's a great way to put it.
We didn't have like some, like I meet some business people or whatever who are doing things, and they're like, most people would have walked in there with like a PowerPoint presentation and an actual ask of what you're wanting to do. And like, we went in and you just shared your heart with them. And like, their giving team they're the real deal, man. Like, it's routing all of the products getting made. It's getting it to the right giving partners. It's, some of those people in that room came from like Apple and things like, it was awesome. And you just shared your heart, and we weren't like pitching anything. We weren't trying to sell anything. We just told them what, we had done in St. Louis, and like, it was cool, man.
Totally. The thing I remember about that meeting is when Blake opened it up and it kind of set the context for why we were all there, it was clear that the decision was already made that we were going to do something together. It was just how. So I think that's another thing that made it feel not like a pitch. It was because we didn't have to. Like, Blake was already in. Yeah. When Blake's in, then it happens. So it's just like, okay, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
And they were diversifying how they do their giving so that people can get involved more locally if they choose to, or they can do the one-for-one stuff. And this gave them an opportunity to test that idea out. And I mean, the timing couldn't have been any better.
It was perfect, man. It really was. Because without them stepping in, like building a second wall, especially in LA with all of the permits and all of the just cost of construction and all those things, like without them, there wouldn't have been a project.
Right. No way.
Can you talk a little bit about future projects and how kind of the funding works between like a giving partner, One Climb, and a local climbing gym and the Boys and Girls Club?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we learned from Sonoma, and I think we learned in St. Louis, is that everyone's got to have skin in the game. So we're all, the proportions are unimportant, but what is important is that everyone's giving at least something to make this thing happen, whether that's the Boys and Girls Club, the commercial climbing gym, One Climb, or a primary donor. Everyone's involved and everyone's got skin in the game. And how this thing scales, I mean, it could be someone like Tom's deciding they want to do a bunch more. It could be finding individual donors or corporate donors in each city moving on. I have no idea. And that's kind of the fun part of it, is that it's not like we're not following like a very clear roadmap. This is, here's how you're going to do it. Like a lot of this stuff is still to be discovered.
Yeah.
But
that's cool.
I don't know. I just feel like it's good. I just have this sense that those answers are going to reveal themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because, at first you're like, when we talk about the idea, you're like, I want to build climbing walls in Boys and Girls Clubs because there's a structure there, and they have, they care about the kids, and it's not just putting this thing up in like a random park, and who knows who's going to use it and who's going to end up controlling it and charging and all of that stuff. Like, I thought the Boys and Girls Club idea was brilliant because it's actually such a structured environment, and you can go in, you can meet with the heads of the club and their insurance people and their staff that's in charge of like the building and everything. And I just, I appreciated that because my mind, even though it's like creative and can get out there, like I've got to have that structure and to understand it. And I think that structure you put together was really cool.
Yeah, it definitely helped. And that was one of the main things we learned from Sonoma, was that I was afraid it was going to be too hard. But when I, because I had to go in and talk about pitching, like pitched my heart out to the board of directors in Sonoma at the Boys and Girls Club. And what we learned from that is that like it's already covered on their insurance. Like most clubs already have something way riskier than a climbing wall going on, whether that's a pool or a playground or something like that. So it's not an insurance question. Like most often, it's just a funding question, and a staffing question, and after that, you're kind of good. So
Yeah.
it was just great to like have all of these. You make these assumptions about what's going to be hard and what's going to be easy before you start something, whether that's a climb or a nonprofit endeavor or maybe even a business endeavor. But you're usually wrong, or you have to at least be open to being pleasantly surprised that you're wrong.
Yep.
And then maybe it actually won't be that bad, or maybe you'll find a solution that you couldn't even think of.
Yep. That's cool, man. I was wrong because I was like, oh, we're going to build a bunch of traverse walls in these schools or in these Boys and Girls Clubs. And you were like, no, man, like these are going to be expensive and they are going to be awesome. And this, like, we're not going to bolt some holes to a concrete wall. Like, we get 5 auto blaze and like state of the art everything and brand new holds and like amazing walls. And I think that's the difference is like, yeah, we probably could have like built a lesser experience and built more quicker, but we just want to do something really, really good that the kids are really proud of. And I don't think it's going to be long to where we can still do that, but actually do it to scale and be able to do a bunch of them and put them up as fast as we would be able to put up traverse walls. Like, I really feel like it's going to happen.
Totally. I mean, it's a fine line between defending a vision and being really obdurate at times about seeing that through, but also letting go and trusting other people to help make it happen. Those lines I find can be blurred sometimes. You end up hanging on too tight where you should be letting go, or letting go in an area that you should be hanging on really tight. We almost built a traverse wall instead of a proper wall. Like, that would have been disastrous.
Wow.
He says that's one thing I've learned is you gotta, with time, you learn to how not to hold on too tight in certain areas and how to stay true to your vision when it's important.
Right. Yeah, it's really, really interesting, man. It's really cool. And
also being open to like being wrong and iterating as well.
Yep.
I just think that what we've learned in what we've built so far is that there's a lot of validation in some of these early premises that we had, such as top rope walls instead of bouldering walls, auto belays instead of traditional belays, a focus on summer camps, the proximity of the climbing gym to the club itself. Like, just really foundational things that will probably not change.
You're right.
But then also being open to someone like a climbing gym coming up with and delivering way more than we could ever imagine. Responsibilities that we thought one climb was going to have to carry.
Yep.
And not hanging on too tight and letting Touchstone be creative and deliver on all of these passionate ideas that they have. How cool. Like, we don't have to hang on too tight.
It's really neat, man. It's like it flows. I didn't really think about it that way.
Yeah. It can flow in the wrong direction sometimes too. You over manage, or you get fearful and you hang on too tight. But the more partners you have, the easier it is to stay in check, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What are you, besides one climb, what are you working on currently, like actually rock climbing wise?
Rock climbing wise, I'm still spending a ton of time in Yosemite. My passion hasn't changed. It's still big wall free climbing and kind of taking aid climbs from the 60s and bringing them into the modern age by freeing them. So I've got a project on Higher Cathedral Spire right now that's just beautiful. If I had to name it right now, I'd call it the good, the bad, and the ugly, because it's got like every style of climbing on it. It's got gross, dirty pitches. It's got splitter pitches, wide stuff, thin stuff, bolted, trad, everything. It tests every skill. It's 1,000 feet tall. It's 11 pitches. It's just really, really cool. And I'm looking forward to finishing that with my partner, Ben. hopefully this summer, but maybe early fall, and then looking on to the next. But I mean, I've got so much going on between One Climb, and I'm going to be at Dad this year, and I'm opening a climbing gym, that having projects that are close to home, like Yosemite, I think is more the direction my climbing is going to continue to go versus big expeditions internationally.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
But it's still like, because Yosemite is still so close to you, it's like the real deal. It's not like you're going to something that's not world renowned still. It's amazing that you're so close to it, and then you can have that experience so close to home.
Yeah, I could wake up at 4 a.m. and be climbing, by breakfast.
Wow.
And stay for however long I want, a day, 2 days, a week. I could do a day trip if I wanted to. And I think that's just going to become increasingly important to so I can feed my passion for climbing, but also be present for One Climb, for my family, for my business.
Yeah, that's exciting, man. Congrats on being a dad. It's a big deal. I'm super excited for you guys.
Thanks. Yeah, we're stoked. It's going to be great.
Wow. Man, can you tell people a little bit about, if they want to find more information on you, or, follow you online, or where they can, what's the best place?
Either my website, which is just my name, kevinjorgeson.com, or I have the same kind of handle on social media across all the platforms. It's just K Jorgeson, first initial, last name. And then for One Climb, it's just oneclimb.org. I think we own both the number one climb.org and written out ONE climb.org. And yeah, that's where you can follow along.
That's cool, man. So I'd like to always wrap up with one other question. So if you can kind of think about, and I know this is going to be hard for you to answer because climbing's always just been part of your life, but let's say you never found it, and let's say climbing never found you as a kid, and you never, how you couldn't get away from it, but let's say you didn't have that opportunity and no one introduced it to you, and you never went to a climbing gym, and because your life has gone through such a strategic chain of events to get you to where you are, just with your personality and what you're, how you operate, where do you think you would be, and what do you think you'd be doing?
I think that I'm kind of made to kind of be my own boss in a way, to create stuff. I really love creating stuff from scratch. I kind of have an entrepreneurial spirit, even though I haven't built up some big company from scratch before. One Climb is an expression of that. My new climbing gym called Session is an expression of that. PCI was an
Great
expression
name.
of that. So I think I would have come up with some other idea and started some company unrelated to climbing, or I don't know, maybe just be a rally car driver.
That sounds cool too. It's a really tough question because you almost can't picture yourself without it.
Yeah, it's really hard. But
well, man, thank you so much for calling in. I know you have a lot going on. I appreciate taking some time to chat. I'm looking forward to working with you more and seeing where this next wall goes in.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks for everything.
All right, man. Take care. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today on the SOIL podcast. It was super awesome to catch up with Kevin. Seems like we get to catch up a lot, but it's always kind of quick things and what are we up to and how can we help each other and things like that. We get to hang out when we travel, but it's been really nice to sit down, turn my phone off and just be able to chat with him for the last hour or so. So I'm incredibly thankful, and I appreciate him allowing me to help him out. So thanks for being with us, and really looking forward to the future of One Climb and seeing where all this is going to go.